Hey guys, Nate here with Edelbrock. We've got a new eTuner 4 app that we just released for force induction support, and in it is new firmware for your Pro-Flo 4 ECU. So here in this video, I'm gonna real quickly go through the steps that it takes to get the firmware loaded on your ECU. So before we get started, we're gonna quickly review the process. There's 5 steps, here they are. Step 1, we're gonna take the tablet, link up with the ECU, and check our current calibration. Step 2, we're going to save our ECU settings. Step 3, we're going to load the new firmware. Step 4, just like we checked which calibration we were on, we're going to load a new updated version of that same calibration. Step 5, we're going to reload our ECU settings that we saved previously, and when we're all done, car should start up and run just like it did before. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so before we get started, I want to cover a couple things real quickly. You're probably going to fall into one of 3 different categories. First category, and this video is going to be for you guys, is if you're already an existing Pro-Flo 4 user and you've been using the system for a while and you're happy with how it's running, you've got your calibration dialed in, your settings are set to where you want, we're going to save those settings and then reload them once we get the new firmware loaded. Second category would be someone who maybe you're a little bit newer to Pro-Flo 4, you're just getting started, haven't really dialed in the system yet. I'll cover that process at the end of the video. Third category would be someone who's actually going to run force induction. Guys are going to run supercharger or turbo. That'll be a separate video. Before we get into this, you should already be on the new app version. The app version you need to be on is v4.0.1:7. We'll call it 4017 for short. So before we get to this point, make sure you already have the new app loaded. If you need to visit the Google Play Store to update the app, go ahead and do that first and then come back to the video. We need to make sure that the battery, the car's battery, is fully charged. We don't want to lose voltage while we're updating firmware or loading calibrations. And also make sure your tablet is fully charged. If you need to, you can put a battery charger on your vehicle at a low amp, 2 amp or something. And if you have to plug in your tablet, go ahead and do that. But make sure both your car and tablet are fully charged, ready to go before doing this process. Okay, so we're in the car. We're gonna open up the eTuner 4 app. Now remember, you wanna make sure you're on version 4017, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn the ignition on, tap the red X to get communicated with the ECU. Now you'll see this pop-up just came up and it says firmware update required. So the system's actually checking and it's noticed that the ECU is on old firmware and it's letting you know that you need to load new firmware. And if you read through it real quick, if you actually tap yes, it'll take you to a PDF file and it's gonna go over the 5 steps again. So we're gonna check the current calibration, step 1. We're gonna save settings, load firmware, load our updated calibration, and then finally reload our saved settings. So you can refer to this document. It's on the tablet. We'll also put it on our forum. So if you need to go on the forum, you can print it out and have it for reference. Now to jump between this document and the app, if you touch this bottom right square, you can toggle back to the Edelbrock app. Okay, so the first step, let's look at it again, is to check our current calibration. And you'll see it's highlighted right here. We're gonna look for the map number. So let's go back and do that. So this car has got map 5015, all right? Let's go back. Next step, save ECU settings. And we're gonna do that by going into ECU settings and backup. It's this option here, save ECU settings. Ignition needs to be on. We're gonna tap read. It's gonna save the file. And I'm gonna give it a name. Doesn't have to be anything complex. I'm just gonna call it 1, 2, 3, 4. Hit done, hit save. So my map 1, 2, 3, 4 has been saved to the My Maps folder. Great. Okay, so let's go back to the document. We saved our settings. Step 3, we're gonna load v65 firmware. All right, we'll go back. ECU settings. Load ECU firmware, hit yes. Gives you a brief review of how to do this. All right, so we already have the firmware we're gonna load is version 65. It's already selected, pf4-v065.hdr. I'm gonna hit load, and it'll take a moment, but we're gonna go ahead and start loading the firmware. This process takes about 2 minutes. All right, there it goes. Okay, it's been about 1 minute, 30 seconds. We're getting close to having the firmware fully loaded, 85%. 90%, 95, almost there, 99, all done. Okay, so there's a note, it says ECU firmware was loaded. Cycle the ignition off for 10 seconds, and then we're gonna turn it back on. So we're actually gonna wait until we hear the main relay click off. Okay, it clicked. I'm gonna turn the ignition back on. Tap finish. All right, I got a green check. Let's go back to our document. All right, we've loaded the firmware. Step 4, we're going to load our updated calibration. Let's go back into the app. Now, if you'll remember before, we checked, this car is running 5015, so we're gonna go ECU settings. Oh, disconnected, let's reconnect. We're gonna go ECU settings, load map, hit the check mark. We need to select the Pro-Flo 4 directory, and we're just gonna scroll down until we find the 5015 calibration. Now, all the firmware 65 cals have v65 at the end of the file name. So you'll need to make sure that you select a version 65 calibration to work with the version 65 firmware. So we've got 5015 selected. We're gonna start loading it. It's gonna ask us the firing order, standard Chevy, 18436-572, load the map. This process is quite a bit faster than the firmware. Should only take about 1 minute. Okay, we're almost done loading the cal. All right, same thing. So we're gonna turn the ignition off. Takes 10 to 12 seconds. We'll wait for the main relay to click off. Okay, I heard it. We're gonna go ahead and press OK. Turn the ignition on, hit finish. All right. So new calibration's loaded. The thing you wanna check is they're gonna be on firmware 65, and our map also says V65. So we've got matching firmware and matching calibration. That's great. Last step, let's go back to the document. Load saved ECU settings. So if you remember back up in step 2, we saved our settings. That's our air fuel ratio targets, ignition timing, all of that. We're gonna reload those settings, and when we're done, the car will fire right up and run just like it used to. So let's go back to the app, ECU settings, restore ECU settings, hit the check mark. And you'll see right there is the file I saved, 1234. I'm gonna load it. This actually only takes a few seconds. Don't need to restart the ECU. I can go to the home page, go to the gauge display, digital display, let's see. Throttle moves, temperatures look correct, everything looks fine. So if everything went smoothly, then this thing should fire right up. All right, so that's it. If you're an existing Pro-Flo 4 user and you want to reload all your existing files, this is the process you would use. If you're a newer Pro-Flo 4 user and you haven't really dialed in the system yet, go through the same steps. All you need to do is load the firmware and then reload your calibration using the setup wizard. It'll reset your settings. You can adjust your air fuel ratio targets, your ignition timing, all of that. For you boosted guys that are running superchargers or a turbo, we'll have a separate video for that and how to get started with boost stuff, including some tuning tips. All right, so as you can see, pretty straightforward. Thank you for watching. If you do have any questions, feel free to visit our forum at edelbrock.com or call our tech line at 1-800 416-8628. Thanks.